All
Let me
right.
see.
So I'm not gonna give you a title, man. I don't think a title really gives people too much justice, man. I would just like to say that you're definitely a creative, man, from the aspect of not just community development and trying to build up the Mount Pleasant, Buckeye area, small businesses, being a voice for that community and impacting them and doing some change down there. Not only that, but also doing some clothing, Cleveland over everything, music production, all of that stuff. I think like you wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. And I just want you to highlight some of those things and talk about that.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I never was successful in fitting in a box, so I appreciate you, you honoring that. Um, but I'm no different than anybody else. I think there's always a lot of different things to really make us who we are. You know what I'm saying? And my biggest, what some may highlight as being a strength, I really view it as a weakness because I can't turn my heart off. So if my heart is driving me to go to this space, I'm going there. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to honor, oh, well, I've spent, X amount of time here and I need to finish strong on this and this and that. Well, I always think about, just being on the right side of history. And if I can make a change or maybe even produce some change or do something like that, or whatever it may be, I'm always looking to do that. So I'm definitely a product of Buckeye. Done basically everything in this neighborhood. I've worked in the neighborhood at the library for, 17, 18 years. Also had a shoe store, co-owned a shoe store and managed it for about 4 years at Buckeye Plaza. I was attending that plaza, paying that exorbitant rent and, but just working in brick and mortar and stuff. That was where I first got my taste of entrepreneurialism. And just being a creative adjacent, music was always a form of therapy for me. So when I was, working at that shoe store 13, 14 hours, in addition to, being at the library as well, going to school, all that good stuff, all in that same time, I would come home and just start making beats, right? So shout out Fruity Loops and all of that good stuff. But so that's something that I still do. It's something I still honor. But I do think that, our issues as a community really begs for creative thinking, and creative solutions. And I think that the spaces that we're in is really, it's the most ideal time and space for creatives to really thrive and create the new realities, So.
Yeah, that's dope. Um, Talk about like some of the current stuff you was doing up until like COVID and all that stuff. I seen a big push. Like it seems like summer, you was doing a bunch of festivals and stuff like that. Anything you want to like highlight that maybe might not have gotten on spotlight? I did see um some tragedy happened on Buckeye too, man. So they kind of building it up. It seems like it's some gentrification going on. I don't know if that is a fact or not.
Yeah, it
You know
is.
what I'm saying? So, and was some still some issues up and around there, but you want to talk on that? So,
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, born and raised in this neighborhood, so I've kind of seen it. I've seen it kind of hit that arc. Then I've also seen it as kind of hit the depths as well. And at its worst, it almost felt like a controlled demolition.
mm,
Like folks are just the disinvestment just all seemed to happen all at once, and then just as a domino effect, just kind of happened over the course of like 20 years. You know what I'm saying? 99. I just think about. I always feel like was a kind of when things changed in the neighborhood. St. Luke's left as the hospital, and then you had all this different changeover from Buckeye Plaza to Shaker Square to, businesses were leaving, this and that. I mean, it was a lot of stuff that all happened all at one time.
what's that? I'm sorry to cut you off. I want you to jump right back in. But Tops was there too, right? The grocery store. So now we kind of dealing with a food desert too, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, little known fact, like even when I was when I had the shoe store, they had transferred over from Tops to Giant Eagle. And so Giant Eagle had actually left 4 times while I was there. That
Mm,
wasn't publicized. but they left and went to private ownership through Gillen-Bardo. The Gillen-Bardo was there for about a year, and then they sold it back to Giant Eagle. Corporate ran it again, and Gillen-Bardo jumped back in, this and that. They were always looking to leave this neighborhood, you know, and it always reminds me that, you know, we're the ones we're waiting on. Nobody else is coming. We can't rely on these folks to, you know, these exploitive industries and agencies or whatever to service us and to understand our unique needs, you know. They just want our money. They don't really honor the people. But, you know, also with that firm understanding, you know, I just felt like in addition to institutions and businesses and so on and so forth, we were also losing the sense of community that we had. And that standard wasn't there, you know, like it once was before. So when I was a kid, we used to have something called the Solar Buckeye Festival. And that always felt like a homecoming of sorts. Like people that may not have lived in the neighborhood anymore, they still had that you know, social capital connected to the neighborhood. So they were always coming back, and it always felt like warm. And that whole day was just, it was just amazing. No incidents, so on and so forth. It was really about love. And so you see this parade kind of dwindle down from being you know, extending from 116th to 130th to then all of a sudden it's like 116th to 124th. Then it's 116th to 122nd. Then it's even smaller and smaller and smaller. And what I recognized was that the reason why you weren't really getting the engagement that you once did before is because it was coming from the top down, not from the bottom up. It didn't understand what people needed. And so I started the Buckeye Summer Soul Series about 5 years ago. Last year we did 8 events in Buckeye total. We shut down streets and we have block parties, which is, you know, that's foreign for our neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have those block parties. When I'm riding through Shaker Heights or Cleveland Heights or something, there ain't nothing. I'll see some cones up there and I'll see some folks in the middle of the street eating together in the whole nine. So, you know, it just begged me to think about the power of a collective experience and creating space for us to really interact and connect with one another. The year before I started this Soul Series, like my house was broken into. And I remember just kind of looking up the street. And I remember once when I was a kid or whatnot, I was able to find all my stuff, you know, after the fact. You know, the hood told me exactly who bought what, where it was at. You know what I'm saying? I'm hitting the corner stores, this and that. And that was, those are neighborly interactions. But, you know, fast forward to, you know, the more current situation, I didn't know where to start. You know what I'm saying? So it just made me feel like, you know, we had taken the neighbors out the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I don't never call it the hood. Neighbors are here. You know what I'm saying? We're just not connected with one another. And so that's really what this is about.
Let me ask you this. So definitely took some work to get some traction and build up. So now we're in this new space with COVID. Now, what's the conversation? What we looking at now?
You know, I really don't focus too much on COVID right now. I want to make sure that everybody's getting PPE, functional PPE. I think what my biggest issue as far as like the COVID response has been that the people who need PPE the most are the ones that are getting single-day use products, right? We're giving them an N95 mask that ideally isn't supposed to be used for more than a day, but we're asking them to stretch it out for 3 days, or giving them a one-ply cloth mask that they got to wash every day and this and that. So I've been working with a few different mask initiatives to ensure that, number one, we're getting functional PPE to folks who need it most, and that, you know, we're also raising the standards for a lot of these initiatives because we know that a lot of them are only looking at creating headlines. So we gave away 80,000 masks. Well, if they only good for 1 day and 60% of all of the COVID-19 cases in the city of Cleveland are Black folk, then what are we really saying here? Are you really, it's a Band-Aid on cancer, you know? It hasn't really stopped anything from me as far as like Buckeye Summer Soul or any other stuff. I've just been trying to find like a creative way to like navigate in these, you know, uncertain times, right? So this year I still want to have a Buckeye Summer Soul Series. And what I would like to do is just try and sponsor everybody cooking out in their own respective space, right? So that we can still share that day and have that moment together, bring the resources out and, make sure that folks are still able to get connected with what's going on in the community, even though we seem to be kind of fragmented in our experiences. I mean, shit, you can't even tell if somebody's smiling anymore, you know what I'm saying, with a mask on, right? So it's like, well, how do you even interact with a person? Where's the humanity at, right? So it's, I enjoy problems because I like problem solving. I like thinking creatively, it helps me to access the other side of my brain. But man, that stuff ain't stopping nothing. I mean, the hood's still functioning, they still jugging, they still doing what they got to do. I just want to make sure that that we're being mindful of this because, hey, I mean, if one thing doesn't get you, another thing will, right? And, our experiences and Black American experience is very unique. So it's hard for us to prioritize COVID-19 when there's a million other things on our list that we need to prioritize as a people. All of a sudden, this got to take center place. It's difficult, man. It really is. So we just got to understand our people and how we can work best with them and, just keeping them safe, to be honest with you. And I think we need community. That's really what we need most. So, yeah, I'm just focused on still trying to create amidst all of this stuff.
Dope. I love it. Talk about, just give me a little segue into like where you find your inspiration at, bro. What drives you? Let me ask you this: like, what type of content do you take in? You reading a lot? You looking at documentaries? Like, of course, you're producing and being creative on that end. Like, can you talk about some of that?
Well, on the production end, it's super easy there. Our group, I kind of called it the sample pack, and but it's about 30 plus of us, and what I love about it is we do this mystery sample challenge every week. We started doing this around COVID-19, and so every Wednesday at 6 p.m., we'll take a mystery sample that's unveiled to us at 5:30, and then we'll take the IG Live and just try and turn it into a beat within that hour. Oh. And so what always inspires me off of that is, just the power of individuality. We're all pulling from the same sample, and you'll hear 10 different beats. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I'm always inspired by, what other people see in their and all of their practices and so on and so forth. I mean, that's always a source of inspiration. Outside of that, like on the community side, I'll say anger usually is my driving force. I feel like the biggest life hack for me has been channeling anger. Back in the day, like I'd be angry about stuff and I wasn't really sure how to affect change or what to do with my anger. And so a lot of times, you find yourself, it reminds me of what psychology says, right? Like there's the tragic expression of an unmet need. And I feel like we're seeing that right now with Minneapolis, right? Like people are hurting, right? But this is a historic issue. And, policing, is the derivation of it from Black bodies is the slave patrol. So if that's our starting point, what are we really, you know what I'm saying, understanding? But I think our biggest question and biggest looming question for us as a people is how do we channel that anger? And just on an individual basis, like it's a lot of stuff that happens on the political side or it's business side or whatnot of things here in the neighborhood that anger me to no end. And, it always begs me of how I can get that word out to community, how we can mobilize around that, how we can kind of turn it into collective action and really advocate for our own well-being and not kind of sit passively, and just continue to be bystanders, but be upstanders, And so there's just a perpetual drive around that, just knowing that we haven't ascended to our highest selves. I don't think that there is a Black neighborhood, quote unquote, in the city of Cleveland. If you go in like certain spaces like Little Italy, they take ownership of those spaces. You can go in Little Puerto Rico or something, 36, 30. I mean, the police are Puerto Rican, so on and so everything, all the businesses, well, they were at one point, but like these neighborhoods were clearly defined and they were culturally relevant and sensitive. And I don't think that we've had that space though as Blacks in Cleveland. And I think that that's something that that's a goal right now is we see all of these, I spoke earlier about how this controlled demolition seemed to happen in the neighborhood. Well, now all of a sudden this reinvestment money is pouring in, I mean, it's coming out of nowhere at every angle. And I think that at some point, there are a lot of folks that are at the top of the food chain who have a lot of plans for this neighborhood. And I think, you know, our experiences and our lives have to mean something, and we have to raise those experiences to their arena and really advocate for our own well-being, and hopefully take control of this funding and dictate what our neighborhoods look like for once. That lofty goal, that lofty idea of, or utopian idea, is what really drives me, because I know we can reach that. It's tangible. You know, we just 4 or 5 people away, you know, from really making something happen. Yeah.
Dope, love it, man. Appreciate you. Look, I'm gonna ask this. I've been doing these COVID like interviews, creative interviews. I ain't really put no title on it for real. But this is the first time I kind of asked this question to somebody, just trying to change it up. Can you talk a little bit about like your upbringing, like your mother, father, kind of what they did, kind of what your childhood looked like? Was it creative? Like, so my name is Jamal Amir. So I got the Arabic name from the 70s because I was born in 1970. So the Black Panthers was still kind of involved, and my father was with like Malcolm X. My grandparents was more Martin Luther King, but my father and them was more rebellious, and they was kind of more, not rebellious, but they was more Malcolm X. So I had African drums in the house, like, so this was my whole setting. So paint me a picture of like your upbringing, and because I know it's vital to how we are. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's missing.
Yeah. I mean, we're all the sum of our experiences, you know. So yeah, to say the very least. I mean, I was raised by my mother and my grandparents. My father is Pakistani, who I didn't get gain contact with until I was like 28 or so, 29. And, he always reminded me I was Muslim, on a regular basis. Like, I always don't know but I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic high school. I went to Benedictine right in the neighborhood, went to grade school right in the neighborhood, Our Lady of Peace. My mother, she is a social worker, homeless advocate. When I was a kid, she instilled a lot of those principles to me, so Christmas break, I wasn't like kicking it or hanging out in the neighborhood. My mother was a director at the shelter, women's shelter. It's now Norman Her, but she was a director there. So that was where I would spend my Christmas. And, it was always a humbling experience. And I was always, just through action, just kind of asking myself life's most persistent question, because I had this great standard of humanitarianism and activism and within my house. And so my mother would always say that, you, in order to serve the people, you have to love the people. And so those principles have been guiding me ever since then. And, I'm just deeply appreciative of just her and her work and the whole nine, and just creating space for me to just kind of find myself and my voice within what's happening around me. Only child and single mother meant you wasn't necessarily getting everything you wanted. So that's where the hustle kind of took on, it took place, it took shape or whatnot. So, started working when I was 12, 13, this and that, and understood social capital pretty young and the whole nine. So,
so I know part of the culture of getting into beats and all of that stuff. I don't know if you're older than me. I'm about to turn 50 in a couple of weeks.
Get out of here. No, I was born in 83, so I was just born. I was just celebrating my birthday last 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
Okay, so I was 13. So 84, 85, I had just got the brand new Run DMC album. So yeah.
That Raising Hell. What is that? Is that Raising Hell? Which Run DMC is that?
Yeah, the first one came out 84, 85.
Okay, yeah.
The first one. So that was the beginning of the culture shift of everything. So that's Reaganomics. So I'm Reaganomics, cocaine just not hitting. Hip hop is hitting, graffiti, the whole nine. Internet is coming soon. You know what I'm saying? So I touched down at Akron U, and we just got the brand new internet. So paint me a picture of like, you know, I guess being a teen, like 13, 14, like, so.
Uh, you know what's always interesting to me is like I feel like my generation is probably like the last of the folks that had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. So I remember us like I had a computer classes or whatever when I was in like 5th grade. I might have been like 10 or 11 or something like that. We still using floppy disks, you know, like, real, like we, you know, DOS prompts and all that good stuff. And we getting it in for 2 years straight and graduated, got a little piece of paper and the whole nine. And by the time I was in 8th grade, you know, you had T3 lines and CD-ROMs and, you know, IMAX and all this different stuff. So it was like, yo, what's this new world? Like all of us had to kind of take to it like ducks to water. But what you really kind of recognized in that span of time was that there was no stopping this digital age, and that this pursuit of technology was really kind of taking over our lives in really interesting ways. I remember us sitting around a computer for we only had like a 56K line or something like that at our grade school. So I remember sitting, using our entire library period, waiting for a 3-minute Allen Iverson highlight reel. It took 45 minutes for that joint to load. We were sitting there like, damn, man, oh man, it's about to be something, you know. But it was the new medium. It was the interaction. It was, you know, just being a part of a larger community and reminding yourself that you weren't isolated, and all these things that the internet really represented. And you know, even when I was like 12 or 13, I had a list of like samples that I would love to samples. Now I didn't have I didn't have a SP1200 or anything like that. You know, I didn't have anything. But you know, 10 years later, thanks to the computer via software, some guy with no formal musical training, had the ability all of a sudden to create all these things that were, you know, my wildest imagination when I was 12 or 13. So I think that as opposed to some of the kids who were kind of born in, we had to get sworn into this. Right. And for us to be sworn into it meant that we had to really kind of see the potential in it and kind of turn it into kinetic. And I always honor your work for being that, you know, but I feel like all of us who were of that age bracket or whatnot and had to transfer all that analog know-how to digital know-how. I think that we understood and understand that a new world was emerging. And look, here we are, you know. I think about a lot of my OGs. I mean, they were having a tough time when COVID hit, because before then, this virtual world was an option. It was optional. Yeah. And now when it's the only game in town, yeah, you got to figure it out, you know. Yeah. And
so what's it looking like? Are they trying to do some training, or, you know, it seems like I've been screaming this, creating content, creating a platform, jumping on LinkedIn, getting your connects together, and, you know, getting on camera and writing and creating this content, because like you said, it's foreign talking in front of a screen when I've been trying to tell cats for 4 years to get on this stuff.
Yeah. You know, you one of the inspirations for me to walk around with a microphone. I always think of you like a clumsy jeweler, man. Always dropping gems wherever I'm around. I think about the other week when we were with
hold up.
You know, bro. Oh, it is what it is. Yo.
That's the old school joint. That got to be like a Cutlass. That got to be a Cadillac, bro. That's a Cadillac.
Yeah. That's the 89 Broham. You know, yeah, old school ride, man. But yeah, I always feel like you always, for one, like even the other week, I remember when we was kind of shooting and my homeboy was there and you was just dropping them gems on him on how to just kind of get his situation up on the photography side and how he should, you know, take advantage of all that that's available to us right now on all these different platforms, you know. And that's the sort of that's what we really need. You know, classes are cool, but you know, people always respect one-on-one interaction. So when I think about some of the OGs who had to kind of learn how to like work in these spaces, I'm always running like a digital literacy course, you know. I just lost my granddad, but that was something I had to do with him every single day. I mean, he knew how to use that iPad to a degree, but he was, you know, it was always, you know, about growth and understanding like what else was happening. Even when I worked for the library, that was essentially what I was doing there as well. I used to work for outreach and programming services. So a lot of our work was in senior buildings and you know, developmentally different spaces or whatnot. So, you know, the digital literacy part was you know, these iPads are almost a cornerstone to a lot of autistic work or whatnot right now. And the same with some of the adults, you know, their grandkids will just drop off a tablet to them for Christmas, and then they, you on your own, grandma, you know what I'm saying? And that was always kind of where I came in. So not doing anything formally, but informally, oh man, it's a perpetual thing. You know, we just got to make sure that everybody has the tools that they need, you know? Yeah.
I think one of the things that happened to me was that the first recession I wasn't prepared for, and I couldn't lean on my degree no more, even though I had 10 years of corporate at a big Fortune 500 company, the whole gamut, 10 years of experience, bro. I was out on the street, back to zero. So I'm making like 60 bands, and now I can't find no work. So, and then I was out of work for 5 years, bro. I don't think people understand having a degree, making 60K, and then being out of work for five years, bro. So this is what kind of I already been, you know, trying to be recession proof.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, and one of those things being recession proof is owning your own home. And let's talk about, you know, maybe is people buying up some property and getting them while it's like $5,000, $10,000 down there, or what?
Not enough of us are. That was one of the things that really inspired the first Summer Soul series. Also, I had two partners with me. I had County Land Bank here, and then I had Neighborhood Connections. And so County Land Bank was here actively giving out parcels and the whole nine and letting folks know what was available in the neighborhood. My thought was people were going to come down here, buy a side lot for $100, grab this house for $5,000, grab this one for $1,200, grab this. Folks weren't ready for that. And so I always reminded myself what Malcolm used to say, that the biggest era of the revolution was trying to rally sleeping people around specific goals.
Damn.
And so I recognized that people were they were in their respective bubbles, and we had to kind of nudge them a little bit to get them to wake up and really kind of see what was brewing and what was happening around them. And that's just something that's perpetual work in itself as well. There's a few people that are realizing the opportunity, but you know, like Hove used to say, people don't get the picture till the weapons get drawn, right? So, you know, silent weapons require wars. These weapons ain't gonna draw on you. You know, it's just gonna happen. So somebody's gotta play Paul Revere and sound that trumpet and say, hey, look, they coming. British is coming, you know? But yeah, the problem is you gotta work faster than the people who got the insider information. You know what I'm saying? And those people are tethered to policy and politics and so on and so forth. So there's a few people who aren't from here, as far as like the state or the city, who are buying up properties. And I was just on a call yesterday with the new owner from the plaza, you know, and he was talking about this neighborhood and all these folks that he's bringing in there, and none of them were from Cleveland, but he's telling me how much he's doing for the community, you know? So, you know, I just think that there's I don't walk away from that being upset. I always walk away from it thinking, well, how can we force community conversation in these moments and get him to get a real barometer and consensus of what this neighborhood needs, wants, and has experienced, you know? And I think that has to happen on every level, though. Like, we got to have some collective realization. Like, hey, if you're going to sit passively by, be a bystander and watch these lots get, transformed like it's somebody else's work, you're going to lose this neighborhood too, just like we have so many others,
Yeah. Bro, I'm sorry. We don't have an upgraded version of Zoom. We about to run out. Give me some last words, man. We got like 5 minutes, man. How can we find you and give me some last words of, some last words on some thoughts or whatever, closing this out?
Man. You could always find me on social media, bumping my gums. I'm usually doing that. Instagram is my preferable format or medium of choice. You can find me on there. It's my first name and my last name together, Julian Khan. But yeah, outside of that, man, we're doing a lot of good work. We started something called Good News Cleveland. Going to be capturing a lot of good news stories throughout the neighborhood and the city. That's through Neighborhood Connection, so check that out. The trailer just launched today. Just launched something called Greater Buckeye, which is a hyper-local news platform or whatnot for the neighborhood, just making sure that we're in control of our own narrative and that narrative isn't controlling us. Man, it's just a lot of active stuff that's going on. And, you know, above anything, yo, if you want to do something, holler at me. If you got an idea, holler at me. I just want us to really come together. And if I don't have anything, I got some social capital, so I can connect you with some folks that can help you or whatever it may be. You know, if it's beats or community or whatever it might be, art or murals or whatever. You know, let's make something happen. We got enough tools in the drawer to build a new reality.
So we got 5 minutes, man. You want to touch on Minnesota? 5 minutes. I know that's gonna take a whole nother session.
It won't, because I just jumped off a Zoom call and I gave them my emotional, visceral response, you know.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you this much. Are we on a string right now? And I ask that from the perspective of what's making us react right now, you know, and what is news exactly? We had a young man who was just slain by police officers here in Cleveland, April 22nd. That didn't make front page news. That wasn't above the fold. And so is that no harm, no foul? Mm. We also know that 1 in every 1,000 Black men will die at the hands of police. That statistic alone makes police shootings one of the, like a public health issue or whatnot for Black men. That also suggests that these incidents aren't limited to the hashtags that we know or the ones that really penetrate our social feeds. It means that there is somebody in every neighborhood. There's 11,000 people in my SPA, in every SPA in the city of Cleveland, 11,000. That means that, what is that, 11 people in each one of these neighborhoods will die at the hands of the police. Instead of us being reactive, much like what I said earlier, I just feel like this is a great opportunity for us to channel some of that anger. And I would really love to see us come together and harness all of these collective experiences. The Black American experience is unique. It's like none other. Slavery is older than this country. Slavery was 1619. This country was founded 17 something, whatever it was, 96, right? Mm-hmm. So when we think about that, that's the foundation of this country. Begging this system of exploitation to integrate us in and treat us fairly, I think, is a sucker's role. That's not what we're here to do. We can create our new realities. We can create our own realities. And, you know, these experiences are really helping us to see this thread of commonality between all of us people of color. And I think that if we're able to create space for us to bring those experiences to the table and really to move away from that table with collective action, we could change everything.
Love it, man. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, my brother. You already know. And you know, I'm checking in with all of these, man. I saw my homie Jay on here. I seen Donald Black on here. I seen Soul on here. I'm watching all of them, man. So I'm tuned in. I'm just appreciative of all the homies being on here, all these great folks that I'm learning about. If I don't know them, man, I just appreciate you really taking this time in this moment and creating a platform for everybody just to kind of vibrate and connect with. So, you know, all love, my brother.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. If you need me, you know, I got your number. I don't know if I had it or whatever, but we can touch base again.
Say less. We tapped in.
All right, bro.
All right, bro.
What's it going to take for you guys to be okay tonight and to stop this chaos?
It ain't me. It's not me. I'm going to let y'all know that now. It's not us guys neither. And I'm glad that y'all said that. It's not us. It's the police. This the madness that they spark up. This is what they encourage. This is what they provoke. This is what you get out of you taking a loved one from someone. This is what you get. You get a lot of people that's hurt, and they can't vent the right way. They can't no longer depend on the police to be here to protect us like they say they gonna do. So this is what you get. And no, it's not gonna end today. I can't tell you it's gonna end tomorrow. I don't know when it's gonna end. But it's for y'all to start. We not the ones that's killing us. Y'all killing us. We can't make a change if y'all don't change.